Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations in Horror, the podcast. I'm your host, Kevin L. Powers. I'm also the owner, operator of Something Wicked Entertainment and Events, and welcome to our podcast today. Now, if you are very familiar with our show, which I really do hope that you are, you will realize that what we do on the show is me and the special guests, let me first say that first, me and the special guests come in and we take an individual film and we kind of critique, analyze, generally have a good conversation about that film. Now, I say good conversation, but that doesn't always mean that the film itself is good. Sometimes the film is, well, questionably good. That just makes for a much better conversation. The show or the movie we are doing today is going to be one of those type of movies. And I know that you are all wanting us to do more of those questionable films because they're just so much fun to talk about. So that being said, I'm going to bring in my special guest. His name is Thomas Tenorello. And how you doing, Thomas?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic, Kevin.
Good, because I'm glad that we are both in a great mood because we're going to be talking about Lucio Fulci's House by the Cemetery from 1981. And we all know exactly how diverse this film is and how infamous it can be, depending on if you're a fan of Fulci or if you're not so much a fan of his work. Me and Thomas have already discussed his movies, the Beyond, and oh my God, I can't even think of the other one.
We did Zombie, otherwise known as Zombie 2, for those of you who are across the pond. And
or Zombie Flesh Eaters.
Zombie Flesh Eaters for you in England. Hello, UK folks. Then which I consider really to be part one of the Gates of Hell trilogy, and we'll get into that. Then, of course, City of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
Quentin Tarantino's favorite Fulci movie for reasons I don't comprehend, but it's still a great movie. And then we did The Beyond, which is probably one of the longest, most in-depth podcasts we have ever done on this show. I think so, too. And I am still proud of my work on that. It was fantastic. It will not nearly be as quality as this one, I assure you, ladies and gentlemen. It's also happens to be Lucio Fulci's masterpiece by many people who've studied his work and many people who are much smarter than I am. So I'm going to take them at their word. So now we come to this movie, which if you look at his filmography, he pretty much made all four of these back to back to back to back to back. He had a streak from like 1978 till about 1984, where Fulci was just unstoppable. And right about the time of this movie, he kind of became very stoppable. And we'll find out why. Maybe. I don't know.
All right, so because this is an 80s movie and you happen to have been born in 81 when this movie was released, I want to know exactly when you came across this film and what your impressions are of this film before I get into my impressions of this film.
Well, Kevin, first time I saw this movie was in the distant year of 2025. Oh. 5 days ago, to be precise. See, I was assigned this movie by Kevin, who is two things. Ladies and gentlemen, he is number one, a sadist, because he likes to torture me. And number two, Kevin is a completist because he has to finish things, as evidenced by one of our previous conversations where he mentioned that he is literally watching every single episode of Knight Rider, which he should have figured out by now that past season 3, they are literally the same episode over and over again. But dadgummit, I'm sure he's finished it by now, haven't you, Kev?
No, I still am going through it, dude.
Okay, he's still going through it, ladies and gentlemen, so God bless him. Well, so like we said, this movie, this is the third part of what Lucio Fulci, I'm not even sure if Fulci himself called these three movies the Gates of Hell trilogy, or if it's just something that later film enthusiasts have imposed upon him. I'm not sure.
Neither am I.
There's really no good record on this, but knowing Fulci, he probably did, and now having seen this film, I don't think he intended this to be an actual trilogy, not like George Romero.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I first watched this movie because my wife was watching a baseball game with her lady friends, and my son was hanging out with his grandma, so I was alone by myself sitting in a Panda Express, and I started playing this movie on my iPhone and my Tubi app. And just as I watched most of it, started watching it on my iPhone, the way Fulci and the God he didn't believe in intended. But then I shut it off as soon as I started, because I realized that I was watching a Lucio Fulci movie in a Panda Express, and there were children playing around me, and God knows what vile atrocities might fly across the screen at any second in a Lucio Fulci movie. So I thought better of it and waited till I got home to finish watching this atrocity. And so that's my origin of this movie, which is interesting how it involves children, because this movie also is all about that. So like my first impression of this movie is, well, that is a thing that exists. Most certainly. The real question that we have to ask ourselves here is, for those of you out there who don't know what we're talking about, and until recently you were blessed, but now you're not about to be anymore. What is this movie about? Well, in my opinion, it's about a photograph on a wall. In fact, you could make the argument that this whole movie takes place inside the mind of an autistic child's head, and that child, as he's staring at a photograph of a house, a black and white photograph on the wall, and that child's name is Bob.
Just Bob. I know.
Just Bob. And this child has gone on in infamy as one of the most reviled characters in all of horror. He's right up there with the bald guy in the original Night of the Living Dead, who kept saying we need to go down to the basement, that racist bald guy. And then maybe he's a distant third to the autistic kid son in the Babadook. Bob would probably be a close second or third, because the problem with Bob is, I'm not entirely sure this was Fulci's intention, but he's got a super annoying dubbed voice. I'm not sure if Fulci even supervised this, or if this was just something the distribution company did. But I feel like he's got the kind of voice that it's clearly not a child's voice. It's clearly an older woman pretending to be a little boy. And his cadence and his very strange dialogue makes him very, very awkward and very, very bizarre. And that's saying something for a Fulci movie. And and here's the problem, folks. He's basically the main character of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big...
So, I just want you all to know, who's listening. I came to this film much, much, much earlier than he did. So at some point in college in the late 90s, I had come across who Lucio Fulci is. I had seen some of his films, but I had actually read about The Beyond, which I hadn't seen at the time, being this amazing film. So I'd seen Zombie. I'd seen Manhattan Baby. I've seen like sporadic movies of his that I didn't know was his. It wasn't until I was in college that I kind of took this horror film class, and I was inundated with everything, with who he actually was and what his filmography was, among other people like Dario Argento. And I got into a whole Italian horror film, Mario Bava, Lamberto Bava, all of them in college. But with this film, because I did a deep dive of Fulci movies, I ended up watching this one, and it was because it was one of the earlier movies of Fulci that I ended up watching. I ended up liking it. I don't know why, because the copy I saw was a really shitty copy, like a VHS 4:3 copy of the movie. And so Dr. Freudstein looked really crappy to me, but I still liked the movie as a kid. As a college student, that could be my college brain thinking, "Oh, this stuff is cinematically brilliant." He's a cinematic. I don't just take it as when you're in college and you're studying this stuff, you kind of start looking at things differently, and you start thinking some shit that's bad is actually good.
We all did terrible things in college, Kevin. We know.
I probably took too many drugs or the wrong drugs and thought this movie was great. But when we decided to rewatch the film for the podcast, I rewatched it and I was like, I was like flabbergasted. I was like, dude, this is not a good movie. And I was watching I think it could be a 4K transfer of the film because it looked crystal. My version now, my Blu-ray is crystal clear and everything.
Yeah.
It's not like a VHS 4:3 copy. It's a crystal clear version. And I used to have a regular DVD version of it too, but it still looked like a VHS copy that was just ported over the DVD. This my copy I watched. It looks crystal clear. It's brilliant, and I'm like, oh my god, what did I like about this movie? And and it's one of those things that because me and you had discussed Zombie, City of the Living Dead, and The Beyond already, his much better films. When I watched this one, I was like, oh, this does not like hold up to those movies at all.
Yeah, and that's the big question that I had when I was done watching it, which was, first of all, why does this movie have fans and what's wrong with them? Second of all, the second thing I had in mind was the question I had to myself was, why? I mean, we're going to say why a lot in this episode, so I'm just going to preface that. Why? What is wrong with this movie? Like, why does this not work, but The Beyond works? But, City of the Living Dead works. City of the Living Dead has its problems, but it still works. What did Fulci not do in this movie that he did in all those others?
I'll tell you two things.
What's your theory, Kevin? Because I got mine.
One is Bob. The other films all have grown-ups and adults as their main protagonists and the people you follow through. And you're right, the Bob character is uninteresting. It would have been better to do the girl child that he watches and he sees throughout the whole movie than it was.
Oh yeah, the ghost child Emily, I think is her name.
Yeah, and then of course Dr. Freudstein is the most boring looking undead zombie thing. It looks like he has a weird trash bag mask that's half melted on his face.
Yeah, it looks like somebody took a gas mask, took off all the appendages of the gas mask, soaked it in water and turpentine, dried it out to the point where it is super tight, stuck it on an actor's head, put a bunch of makeup inside the holes, and put some goo and maybe some veiny stuff on his forehead.
Yes.
And that is your monster. That is your monster. And it doesn't work. He does have a cool kind of Nosferatu homage kind of vest coat thing that I thought was pretty cool. But I mean, it's super dusty and everything. But that's just about it. That's all they got.
Doesn't look nearly as good as anything in the previous movies.
I mean, to be fair though, by the time you finally see him, you're well deep into this mess of a movie. So honestly, if seeing him in all his glory makes you jump ship, then you might as well just keep going at that point.
What are your theories about it? Now, that's my theories.
Well, I mean, we'll get into it as we go on because I think the as this thing washes over us, maybe it'll become more clearer. But like my initial thoughts were just like, this is probably a sign of something that happens in a lot of artists' careers, where once they hit a streak or they become super successful artistically or commercially, not just once, but like two or three times, at least two times, and they then get, I don't want to say cocky, but they get indulgent. They get to the point where they're like, okay, I've done this. Now I want to do it my way.
Yeah.
A good example of this is Ari Aster's career, where he started off with Hereditary and then followed it up with Midsommar. And he seemed like he was just on top of the world. He could write his own checks at this point. And what does he do to follow that up with? I'm going to do almost a 3-hour movie diving into my own issues with my mother, starring Joaquin Phoenix. And it's going to be really weird. It's not really even going to be horror. Bam! Put that out there. Unfiltered Aster. And you're surprised that it doesn't really work. That's kind of weird. And then he does it again. with Eddington, unfortunately. So, but it's not just him. There's a lot of guys we could say
Yeah.
who do that. So I think that's probably what happened with Fulci. I think he had a streak, and I think he has a particular methodology. Which, by the way, I mean, for those of you who haven't been following our Fulci dives for the past, I Fulci is a very important artist to me at this point in my career as a writer, because like the way that I found out that he writes his scripts and structures his movies, kind of the good ones, I mean, kind of like reset my brain as to how I could make something without with with the way that he basically structures scenes as if like these are things I want to see in this kind of movie, and I'll just put them around in a way that works for me intuitively. I strive to be a more intuitive artist, and Fulci was definitely that. But I would argue that he was at his best, like most intuitive artists are, when they have some kind of structure to govern them, when they have some kind of, or production company or something that comes in and says, hey, you got to do this too. A good example of that is with The Beyond. Originally, The Beyond was just going to have one zombie, like this movie does. And though I would argue that Freudstein is not even a zombie. This is not a zombie movie, ladies and gentlemen. People have said that it is. No, this is not a zombie movie. This is a haunted house movie. And this is not a haunted, and this isn't even really that much of a haunted house movie. It's a haunted house paranormal slasher is what this is. But anyway, but with Beyond, he was going to have it be just like one. Shrike was supposed to be like the main zombie, quote unquote. And that was supposed to be it. But the German distribution company who was going to distribute the movie said, nine, you've got to have some kind of zombie assault in this movie. You made zombie. You've got to do something here. So I don't know why he listened to the Germans above anybody else, but okay. So that's what he did. So that's why we have that amazing third act in The Beyond, where they go to the hospital and they got all these different zombies everywhere. And then freaking, they shoot Jill's head off and it becomes a big bowl. And then they confront Shrike. And it's amazing. It's all that because somebody said, you can do your thing, but you got to have this in it.
Yeah.
So I think, and a similar kind of thing happened with Zombie. Zombie was a director for hire gig. He didn't create Zombie. He just reacted to the circumstances that he was given and decided, like I said, that, I may not like the zombie movies, but I may not be able to make the best zombie movie, but I'm going to make the most zombie movie. And that is exactly what he did. With this movie, on the other hand, I feel like he tried to challenge himself, but at the same time, I feel like he also tried to give us the unfiltered Fulci. I feel like he tried to give us his full, quote, vision for The Beyond in this movie. I feel like he tried to do that, but also tried to do something he'd never done before, which is do a story about a family.
Yeah.
Which he had never, ever done before. And I'm quickly looking at his filmography. I don't think he ever really did that much since. I mean, I think he tried to do that with Manhattan Baby, but that movie failed for many, many other reasons. Yeah, it's Manhattan Baby is basically his mummy movie, but with laser-eyed mummies, and it's strange. Yeah, I mean, of course, it's Fulci. It's strange. Like I said, with this movie, I feel like the plot, such as it is, could easily just be set in Bob's head as he's watching everything, because that's the only explanation of anything that goes on that makes any sense to me. You, of course, may disagree, dear gentle viewer. So if we reject the Saint Elsewhere type twist possibility, the story has to do with a family that moves into this house by the cemetery in New England from New York. And we know this is true because the titles on the screen tell us. If there were no titles, we'd have no idea that they were really in New York, except for the taxi cab scene. And we had no idea they were in New England, except for the fact that it's dreary looking. And sure enough, strange things start happening to people, and people start dying because there's something creepy and otherworldly in the basement.
Yeah.
And it has something to do with children, or does it? So, like I said, We said this is part of the trilogy of the Gates of Hell trilogy, but here's the problem that I ran into, Kevin. There's no gateway to hell in this movie.
No, there's no. Yeah, that's the other thing. I always thought that was really weird because there's no gateway to hell. There's one of the 7 doors are not in this house or anything like that.
I kept waiting for it. I'm like, okay, we're like 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes left of this movie. They're breaking down the door, and little Bob's got his head pressed against the door. Are we going to finally figure it out? Are we going to find out? Because there's so many things they could do. They could have Dr. Freudstein like opening a portal down there, and all these zombies are going to come spewing out, and they're going to like do an Evil Dead 2 thing where they're going to keep the basement closed. It could have been awesome. That is not at all what happens in this movie, folks. No. Now, I did see a video on YouTube. I can't remember the reviewer, but this reviewer basically made an argument that it does belong in the Gates of Hell trilogy if you take the idea that the basement itself is hell, and that at the end, we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but, mild spoilers. Yeah. At the end, you could make the argument that very much like The Beyond, this movie ends with our with our main characters entering the beyond, the afterlife, as they say in Italian, la Dalia. But that's too vague, I think, and too broad to be hell. I mean, it's nice to show some semblance of an afterlife that's not total, like, abysmal horror like you did in the Beyond. But it's still, like I said before, there's not enough meat on the bone of this sucker to give us any real inclination as to exactly what the heck is going on.
There is a lot of inference by audience members in regard to this movie, as though some of them are trying to make it fit within the Gates of Hell trilogy. And enough people have grabbed onto that, and that's why it's stuck in there. Because of that.
I agree. In fact, like I said, I think I prefer to think of it this way. I think that zombie is the first part of the Gates of Hell trilogy. I think that they even mention it in the movie. They even say when hell is full, the dead will come out and suck the blood of the living. I know that's a paraphrase of, in the phrase in Dawn of the Dead, but that's enough. Yeah. That is enough, especially when you have, zombies spewing out of the Gates of Hell in The Beyond and trying to do that in freaking City of the Living Dead. I mean, come on. That fits. That fits a whole lot better than this freaking movie does.
So, the thing about this movie is it is very simplified, the way the concept is. You're right. The family, a husband and wife, and their son Bob move into this house. And Bob gets like a premonition almost from the picture in the wall of his father's workspace that he sees this little girl there that no one else can see. And no one else can see her. And of course, he meets that little girl later on in the movie and becomes friends with her. And she's not really real, or she's a ghost, and some of these other concepts don't really fit with some of the other films in this trilogy.
Yeah, there's no ghosts in the. Well, actually, it's not true. There is technically a ghost in The Beyond. That would be the Emily character, the blind girl. Yeah. She's technically a specter. Yeah. But
I would have said that too until they killed her, or the dog killed her.
Well, yeah, but yeah, I mean. I would argue, though, that she's kind of she's a ghost in the classical Roman sense of the term, because, like, in Roman mythology, I'm serious, like, in Roman mythology, they believed that ghosts were made of a physical substance that you could touch. It was like this wispy, that's where we get the term ectoplasm from. So it's not uncommon for them to imagine a ghost having a body of sorts that you could tear apart by a hellhound, in theory.
Okay.
I mean, that's where they get like myths of, like, Prometheus, who is a god and is getting, killed every day by a vulture and his liver regenerating and stuff like that. I mean, that's where all that comes from. But you're forgetting something, Kevin. Before the plot proper even starts in this freaking movie, I'm pretty sure this was a late edition, because I'm pretty sure some studio guy somewhere said, you got to start this movie with a killing somewhere. Because this movie begins with a shot of a crooked cross on a tombstone. and pans over to the titular house. And there's a hard cut to a pretty blonde with no shirt on, putting her shirt back on. This is the only bit of nudity in the entire trilogy. And she's calling out to her boyfriend, Steve. Like, Steve, where are you? So apparently they came to this house by the cemetery, had some premarital sex, and now Steve is nowhere to be found. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you're familiar with the Friday the 13th franchise in any capacity, I think you know where this is going. He finds a mangled corpse hanging on a doorway, and yes, it's Steve, although we never saw Steve before, so we just assume that thing on the door with his brain exposed is clearly Steve. By the way, that thing on the door with his brain exposed is probably the best gore in this whole freaking movie, because Fulci fans might be a little disappointed to find out that this movie is actually kind of light on the gore.
It is.
Yeah. So anyway, she gets killed by a hand of an unseen killer, but it looks like a zombified hand, so we assume this is a zombie, but stabs a butcher knife through the back of her head. It comes out her mouth, and then her head kind of shakes a little bit. It's not the best head stab that we've seen Fulci do. I would argue he's done better gags like that in The Beyond. I'm thinking specifically of the one where the lady gets like stabbed by a nail that goes through her head the other side, and the eyeball comes out at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another thing too. Is like Fulci's gore work is like defined by eye trauma.
Yeah, I was about to mention zombie.
But this movie has no eye trauma. Originally, there was a shot where the landlady, when she's getting slowly stabbed to death with a poker, which is probably the most intense murder in this whole movie.
Jeez.
There was a shot where she gets stabbed in the eye by that poker. But apparently the special effects were terrible. And considering this is a movie that, apparently Fulci didn't like it and cut it. So this is a movie that has and we'll get to it later, a scene where a vampire bat is flying around and then gets like lashed onto someone's hand. And I mean, if you've seen the special effects in that scene and that made the cut, then my goodness, that eye stab must have been really crappy for Fulci to say, no, that's no good.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So you learned something today. So anyway, this girl dies, and all of this is perfunctory, but although I do kind of like the fact that almost every time our monster kills somebody, you see him dragging the victim across the floor, slowly dragging with all the blood just coming onto the floor, the floors are so dusty that it's just like the blood makes a clean path, basically. It's like a macabre mop he's dragging across the floor, and then brings the body into the cellar door. I don't know what it is, but something about the slowness of the dragging of the body and the fact that it's face down just is disturbing to me. I think that's the only bit of that whole opening gambit that is in any way effective. But we never know who that girl is. We never know anything. There's no police investigation. Nobody comes looking for her. It has no bearing on anything that happens after, except for just like whet our appetite for what happens next. I don't even think we see her body later on.
No, we don't. I had the same impression when I rewatched the movie as you just mentioned. I don't think I ever noticed it before I rewatched it. But yeah, that does seem a little out of place considering what else comes along in the movie, and there's no other reference to that whole sequence other than it just opens the movie. Yeah.
And so like the plot proper then starts when Katarina McCall, who is your sweetheart from back in the day, the only actress who is in all three of these movies, and sadly I think she has even less to do in this movie than she did in City of the Living Dead.
This is weird. She's just a mom. And
I know.
She screams, and that's about it.
And she says things that people don't believe. And ironically, she also is the gaslighter of her child when Bob says, "I saw a dead body down in the basement." And she's like, "Oh, well, the babysitter's probably not dead. She's probably seeing her family." "Yeah, I saw her head down there. Mine." By the way, my impression of it is better than what's in the movie. Trust me.
Jesus.
But yeah, so she's there. She's the first one we see, and she explains to Bob that they're moving to this house in Massachusetts where your father can do his research.
Mm-hmm.
What we never know what freaking kind of research it is. We never know what kind of scientist her dad, Norman is his father's name, Mr. Norman, because he's the normal man. We never know at all. We just know that he's investigating. Not really. He's trying to continue. We're only told this because of an exposition dump did by Fulci himself, who has a cameo in this movie as, I guess, Norman's boss, as he's giving some of the most ham-handed exposition and barely compressible exposition you've ever heard. Telling him basically that Norman has to complete the work done by a previous scientist guy who killed himself. We later find out that he killed himself by hanging himself on a steel bar in the library, which is another great little beat that does not pay off.
It's a weird thing because what the doctor is researching is has nothing to do. I mean, he comes across everything that happens in the movie because of a side story to what he's supposed to be researching. It's exactly what he was originally researching.
Yeah, apparently there was a scientist named Peterson who was researching suicide, and then he killed himself. Yeah, I can't imagine why. And his mistress, and then he killed his mistress, and then he killed himself, and left his wife to clean up the mess, I guess. She is still alive, and I mean, Skyrim McCall even says, "Why don't you talk to her?" And he's like, "Nah, we never hear from her again." So yeah. So anyway, the new guy. So yeah, he's a new guy to take up the project of someone murdered in a suicide thing. I guess what could go wrong, huh? So then they finally get to Massachusetts, and then this little German girl, Emmy, I think is her name, or Emma or whatever, but no, May is her name. Such a great German name, May. They should have called her Inga or something like that. But she's got this very kind of weird, discernible German accent. Fun fact, I'm not 100% positive, but I think it's either the actress who played May or the actress who played Jane in The Beyond, the redhead girl with pigtails. Either one of those, I'm not sure which one, but I was on Facebook years ago and some Fulci appreciation posts, and one of those actresses came on to the forum and just talked to people. And I thought it was the coolest thing. She talked to them, shared stories about Fulci and stuff, and it was clear that her English wasn't very good, but she was trying, and it was really sweet. One of the few times the internet is actually a fun, positive place to be. Yeah, but she was very young when she did this movie, so people were like, "What do you remember?" He's like, "Not a lot, but I do remember this," and it's like that. So there's this weird little moment where Bob is sitting by himself in the car and has this semi-telepathic conversation with May, who clearly identifies herself as the girl in the picture. Says, "Bob, I told you not to come here." But Bob is like, "I know, but parents never listen. They always do what they want." Which is parents just don't understand, yo. And I think Fulci wants that to kind of be the thesis of this movie.
Parents just don't understand.
Yeah. Or that, you need to listen to the children, basically.
Because they get warned, or at least Bob gets warnings throughout the entire film, but the parents are completely oblivious to any of the warnings.
Yeah. And also, May herself has this weird premonition of a mannequin in a department store window, which is probably the most arresting and original visual in the entire movie for me, because I was not expecting it. It is surreal and nightmarish, because what happens is May is walking by a department store, it looks like she's staring at this mannequin, this female with there's a mother and a father with a tennis shirt on and a little boy, but it's the girl she focuses on, and all of a sudden the head gets cut off the mannequin, and we see a bloody stump in the mannequin, and the plastic head falls to the floor, and there's blood all over, and she's just like, "No, don't do it, don't do it." We never know why she says don't do it, but it's such a weird little visual that it's like it's gonna stay with me, and it might stay with you, ladies and gentlemen. And so yeah, that's something, a little something to make seeing this otherwise incoherent mess interesting. And if you missed it, I'm telling you, they're gonna show that little head come off again many times in inserts, because there's a suggestion that that mannequin is supposed to be like the premonition of another character, the Anna, the babysitter, who is one of the weirdest, most awkward side characters in all of horror. We'll get to her in a minute, but anyway, so all this happens before his parents come in, and he's got and little Bob's got May's very strange looking doll, which looks like it should be in the Warrens Museum in the Conjuring movies. And they're like, you give the thing away, and they throw it away or something. But so at this point, like, I asked myself, is May either a ghost or a psychic kid? But I mean, it's pretty obvious as the movie goes on that she is a ghost. But it made me think of, oh, this part, at least this little segment of it, feels very Stephen King-y. You know, it's almost because this kind of matter of fact sort of psychic kid conversing with a supernatural force. It's something very like something Stephen King would definitely do. And also, it's in New England. So I'm thinking, and I'll show you more parallels here, that I'm thinking that Fulci was very much influenced by The Shining when he watched it, when he made this. And this is why I had to look up the timeline. The Shining was released June 1980. This movie was released in Italy, August 1981. So almost a full year. So it is possible that Fulci was making these movies and wrote this, although I'm not even sure. I think he probably wrote this movie. I think he may have written this one first because it feels like a dry run for City of the Living Dead and the Beyond. And I feel like he just made this last. I don't know. There's some parallels here that I feel like, yeah, there's some Shining DNA in here. What do you think, Kevin? Do you think maybe there's some Shining DNA in this movie?
I would not have thought about it till you mentioned it, because this is one of Fulci's films where he, like we've already discussed before, he had the whole kind of family dynamic, and there's a lot of that type of stuff in Stephen King films. And this one definitely does not feel like one of Fulci's normal films, other than the fact that, you know, it's a violent movie, and he could have added the beginning sequence because it was not like a normal Fulci movie.
Right. I mean, think about it. The dad's motivation for taking this job is not just scientific curiosity; it's money. He says, "I could get another $5,000 a year, and we could refurnish our big New York apartment." It makes me thankful that she probably. So, like, I'm thinking, like, he probably at least read the book, because the book had been out since the 70s.
You know what? I would not have thought about those parallels until you brought them up. I mean, you simply have a father and a mother character, and of course, the Bob character could be
psychic kid, and he breaks down a door with an axe at the end.
You know, I would not have thought about any of that had you not brought it up, and that's because I did not see this anywhere near the time that The Shining came out. I saw The Shining. I didn't see The Shining when it first came out either, but I had seen that, you know, I had definitely seen it in the 80s. Whereas this film, I didn't see until like the mid 90s / late 90s. Definitely late 90s. I was in college in the late 90s. So I definitely saw this in the late 90s. And so, you know, I wouldn't have thought about those parallels because I never did a thesis paper on him like I did on like James Wells and George Romero. I did deep dives on those two directors in college. I did not do one for Lucio Fulci. That's a great actual parallel, though. I would not have thought about that until you mentioned it. That is really, and that could be why this film feels so different than the other films in this so-called trilogy, is because it was trying to be something else.
Yeah, he was trying to be more of a straight ghost story, I think, with this one. And that explains probably why there's not much gore in this one. It's almost like he was trying to be taken more seriously.
And make a more mainstream film.
Yeah, and didn't succeed. Although that tends to happen sometimes, I think, when a director or well, any artist really who's like who carves their niche out in something that's very niche and decides, maybe I should try and be more popular. I mean, case in point, like Mr. David Bowie, God bless him. Um, he kind of cleared out a nice little place in the glam rock world, but then once he decided, hey, I want to be more poppy, that was a big risk, and he took it, and sure enough, he still was good with Let's Dance, and he made it. But some guys don't. Some people fall on their face.
Well, the other thing is, people tend to forget that Fulci also, because he's working in the Italian film industry, sometimes because they do so much work for hire, they're kind of following trends, popular trends. And he has done tons of films in multiple different genres. But the films that he's most associated with now are his horror films. He's done crime films, he's done erotic films, he's done all kinds of films in his filmography. But those are the films people talk about, it's his horror outfit, and especially the Gates of Hell trilogy.
Yeah, and it's after this that he follows I think Manhattan Baby with one of his first like true giallos, which is New York Ripper.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of his last sort of gasp of success before he just starts going downhill after that. But but man, this movie's got a lot of. I think it wouldn't have been so hard to sit through if it weren't for all the bad editing in this movie. The editor should have been shot.
Interesting that you bring that up, because I didn't have so much problem with the editing. I have a problem with all the circular logic.
Mark my words, that is a bigger problem. Yes, that is a bigger problem, and we will talk about this circular logic, quote unquote. I don't know if you can apply logic to this at all, but but yes, I do think that even a movie with circular logic can be saved somewhat by having a good musical score, and B, which we haven't talked about yet, which we will in a second, and B, good editing. This movie does not have good editing. I feel like there were precise cuts in Zombie and The Beyond. This one feels like a scene will start and then abruptly end for no good reason. Case in point, there's a scene where Norman is trying to find where the crying sound and weird creaking sound is coming from. And by the way, folks, get used to that sound because you hear it a lot in very incongruous places, and there is no real explanation as to where it's coming from. In fact, I read one review who thought it was Bob's voice and thought Bob was making that sound everywhere, and I'm like, no, that's not possible, because there's times when you hear that sibling child sound and Bob is nowhere on the premises. So yeah. Anyway, but there's a scene where Norman's trying to find where this weird sounds are coming from, this creaking sound. He goes all throughout the house and he finds Anne, the babysitter, trying very hard to pry open the boarded up cellar door. He looks sternly at her like, Anne? And then she turns to him and looks at him with her supermodel eyebrows and green, mysterious eyes. And there's a dramatic zoom in to her eyes, and a zoom into his eyes, and a zoom into her eyes, and then jump cut outside the house, a creepy singer, and then boom, we're back in a dialogue in the bright sunlight between Norman and Katerina McCall that has absolutely nothing to do with what we just saw.
Oh, I know what scene you're talking about. Yeah, I do though. Oh, Jesus. That's where I get this film lacks the style of like The Beyond and City of the Living Dead and Zombie or Zombie Flesh Eaters, whatever you want to call it. Because when he does that, and he does do that in all of his films, it seems much more, it flows with the logic that precedes it and comes afterwards. Here, you're right. It just kind of jumps and you're like, whoa, that was like a really strange jump cut to something completely not relevant to what we just saw, and you have to rethink. You have to like reassess yourself in the film when that happens.
But it doesn't give you any time to orient yourself.
Exactly.
Sometimes.
Yes.
It's so wild. And but I will say that one of the things I'm going to get into the positive on this first. There are some good things about this movie. I say one thing aside from like there's some good sequences in this. I think the mannequin scene is one.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get into like my favorite part in a little while. But like I feel like the thing that differentiates this movie from the other ones in the trilogy that I don't feel like it belongs in, is that the other two movies, I feel like for all their greatness, there's very little mystery to the plot. You know, like because this movie is a mystery. Because in City of the Living Dead, you know darn well who the bad guy is. You don't really know why he's doing it, but you know that Father Thomas is trying to end the world. It's just a question of when are the main characters going to figure out what the audience already knows. In the Beyond, again, it's the same thing, except that we're not sure exactly how it's all going to play out. The fate of the world was decided in the first 10 minutes of that movie. It's just a question of how is that going to affect all the rest of the main characters. In this movie, on the other hand, there is a legit mystery. We don't really know. I mean, if you didn't watch this podcast, if we really don't know what Freudstein's deal is.
Nope.
We don't know who the ghost girl is. We don't know why it's important that we know that his wife is not buried in her grave, which the movie makes a point of telling us very, very much. We don't know what exactly he was researching or why it's important and all that, but there is a mystery that it does kind of compel you to keep watching to figure out what the heck is going on. But the fault is that Fulci constructs this mystery in a very haphazardly way.
Yeah.
And the kids are supposed to be the heart of this movie, and neither of them behave all that much like real kids. They're like a caricature of what adults think kids are supposed to be.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good way to describe that. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah, and neither of them have voices that sound anything like children. We mentioned Bob's, but they sound like grown adults doing imitations of children. I think Emily or May's voice is almost as bad, but she doesn't have as much dialogue as Bob does.
No.
But if either of these characters were at all interesting, the movie might have been saved. But yeah, I do think that at least there is some kind of mystery that we don't know. And also, like, again, the thing that was going to drive me forward was like, how is this all going to tie into the gates of hell? I was really like waiting for it. I'm like, come on, there's got to be. I can't wait to see how it happens. Boy, I was disappointed, but you know what? They had me going for a while. That's something.
Well, that's interesting because for you'd always heard about it being part of the Gates of Hell trilogy, and you saw it much more recently than I did. But when I saw it, I don't even recall if there was any like notice of it being called the Gates of Hell trilogy. In fact, I think I mentioned before the first time I saw the Beyond, it was called the Seven Doors of Death. I didn't see it called Beyond the first time I saw it, and I had that crappy VHS quality DVD that was probably free version of Seven Doors of Death, which is what I had for a long time until they remastered it. And of course, they did their famous remaster that Quentin Tarantino had promoted at theaters across the nation for. And then, of course, that's when I saw a crystal clear, really great version of Beyond, and I loved it. I enjoyed it as the Seven Doors of Death. I didn't love it until I saw a good copy of it.
I seriously doubt. I mean, you've seen a good copy of this now, and yeah, it's just it doesn't save it.
This one was the backwards. I thought that the crappy version was good because I had seen it so early, so far back when I was studying Fulci. Now, when I watch a crystal clear version, it's the opposite. I see like all the flaws.
That is the problem sometimes with film restoration. It's like there is the question of, and art restoration in general too has this problem where the restorer has to ask themselves the question constantly: is this the original intention of the artist? Like I remember there was debate years ago about when they restored Michelangelo's not the Sistine Chapel but the Last Supper. When they were restoring that, they asked themselves, were the colors supposed to be this bright? Because they just degraded over time, but then you had to ask yourself, were they really meant to be that vibrant? And some of them were like, no, they weren't meant to be. And of course, the internet tore apart some other really cartoonish art, his restorations that happened later. But one thing we touched on earlier, we didn't talk about yet, is I feel like another thing that might have saved this movie is the music. Because this is the only part of the Gates of Hell trilogy that does not feature Fulci's great collaborator, Fabio Fabrizi. He does not do the music to this movie. Instead, it's done by some dude named Walter Rossetti. Yeah. And some people, fans of this, like the music to this movie. I know that Darcy the Mail Girl on the last drive-in with Joe Bob Briggs said that's one of the things she likes about this movie. She's one of the fans. I'm sorry, but the first opening kind of piano harpsichordish thing that's the theme of this movie kind of reminded me a little too much of Castlevania, the video game. But, for those of you who are a fan or want to know more about Walter Rossetti, I mean, he's a composer known for such hair-raising and arresting scores, such timeless classics as Deadly Impact, Thunder 2, which apparently is basically Death Wish meets Rambo, but it's a Native American kid. I'm for the Hippopotamus with the guy from the Trinity movies. And, of course, the immortal classic 1990, The Bronx Warriors.
That one I've seen out of all the ones you mentioned.
Yes, yeah, and all these other ones, they're all real movies, folks. They exist. And that's what he's known for.
Oh, wow. You know what? I have the score for this movie. I just don't remember it at all. Probably because it wasn't Fabrizi. And I think we talked about that before. I had just gotten the book that he had written about his entire career, and I haven't read it yet.
It just doesn't have the powerful melodies that Fabrizi does. It's just there's nothing really hummable, and there's nothing that gets under your skin quite like the things in the Beyond that he did. You know
what this film really needs is we need to know exactly what Fulci's intentions were, because now that you've got me thinking that he was going for a different style and everything, he could have not used Fabrizi because of that. He wanted something that's a little bit more mainstream, something closer to what could have been in a Stephen King film as opposed to one of his typical films, because he wanted to break out. I would love to know if that was some of his intentions for this film, because this film is so different than the other films. And for everyone who's listening, when you watch this film, you have to keep that in mind as well, because that'll either help or hinder your enjoyment of the film. If you think if you're going in thinking it's going to be a trilogy capping movie based on the Gates of Hell trilogy, a lot of those conventions that are in those first two movies are completely absent in this movie.
So what's not absent in this movie is blood. There's not as much gore, but there's a lot of blood in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about the bat scene. So there's the logic in this. Okay, so all right. So we got, on the one hand, we got a basement. There's something awful in the basement. We know that there's a zombie-ish thing in the basement because we saw it drag a body in there.
A basement door that you're not supposed to be able to open either. Only Freudenstein can open this magical door. No one else has the key. No one else can open it. So.
Then eventually they get the key, though. But you gotta turn it really hard. And somebody has the brilliant idea to use a knife to turn it, which is kind of interesting. But anyway, they actually, I think it was Norman who thought of that. But they later on, again, spoilers, but you find out that there's a laboratory basically down there with all these dead bodies, and it's not a very big basement.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a labyrinth like the freaking one in Evil Dead 2, so there's a scene in the middle of the movie where they finally get the door open with a skeleton key and turning it very hard with the knife, and they open it up. And Norman goes first, and Katerina McCall follows him, and they're going to investigate what's down there. By the way, this whole time, again, spoilers, there's freaking lots of dead bodies down in there. Freudstein must also be a wizard, because somehow he's able to hide what must have been the most putrid, god-awful smell of rotting flesh coming from that basement. I don't know how he would have done that, but okay. So...
Well, they don't see all the bodies either. Yeah. So
But the reason why they don't see the body is because there's a bat that flies out, gets in Katarina McCall's hair, and she's like, Norman, help me. Like, okay. And then he goes in and grabs the bat. Then the bat latches onto his hand like a freaking vice and won't let go. And it's still flapping its little wings. And by the way, animal lovers out there, don't worry. This bat looks so fake. It's not the fakest bat in the history of bats. It's not like, Bela Lugosi bat level bat, but it's pretty darn close. And they bring this bat upstairs, and the solution to getting it off is stabbing it with scissors while it's on your hand. And there's so much blood from this bat. So much blood. Like, what the heck?
Well, a lot of the stuff in here, a lot of the deaths and the blood scenes are very much Fulci. He's not trying to emulate anyone else when he does these, and that's why that bat sequence it's almost comical how far
almost,
he takes
it's freaking hilarious.
Yes, because he takes it so far. Like
it just keeps going on and on and on.
There's no restraint to that.
Not at all.
It's not like the scenes in Zombie or where there's a lot of restraint. I mean, even a little bit. He goes a little bit too far, but not as far as this in some of the scenes in the death scenes in The Beyond. It's a character. It's like beyond being just comical.
I mean, I will say, I guess the reason why they take there's a lot of stabbing in this movie. There's a lot of penetration.
Yeah.
So I guess the Freudian in Fulci was all about the penetration. I wish he had exercised less of that restraint in the very next death, which is Mrs. Gittleson. Poor Mrs. Gittleson. I don't know why she gets it the worst of everybody. She's the realtor, because right after the bat attack, instead of going back into the basement to investigate what must be the worst smell ever, they has a jump cut back to the realtor's office, and they're like, "We got to get out of this house right now. Can you get us another house?" And the guy's like, "Oh, I don't know." And then Mrs. Gittleson's like, "Oh, I think I can help them," and I don't know how, but she goes to the house. They are not there in the house, understandably. Because if that happened to me, I don't think I'd ever want to be in there. Why do they never just check into a hotel? I don't know. But Miss Gittleson is like, "Oh, Mr. Norman, Mr. whatever his last name is." And that is when Dr. Freudstein, zombie, not really a zombie, comes out and just punctures her to death with a hole with a poker from a fireplace. And out of her throat comes a literal spewing fountain of blood, and a perfect originally was. But she gets it the worst because she's the only one who is slowly tortured to death. It's like she's lying, her foot gets stuck in the crack in. We forgot to mention that Mrs. Freudstein is not buried in the grave in the cemetery. No, there is a tomb. A headstone tomb on what I think is the living room floor or kitchen floor. Yeah, kitchen floor of this house. And when Katarina McCall just kind of, oh no, it's Norman who just kind of shrugs it off like, "Hi, dog."
Sorry about that, everyone. You're listening my dogs because someone just came to my house. But that's all right. We'll keep going with the show.
But he's like, "Oh, they used to bury people in doors and houses all the time. That was the thing they did back in the 1800s. I'm like, okay, that's supposed to make me feel more comfortable? Okay. But this thing is just there, and there's this cool part where there's a crack in it and it opens and it grabs her heel, and she's stuck there, and there's a POV shot, of course, and she gets slowly tortured to death with this poker. And I'm thinking to myself, what did she do to deserve this? Whatever did she do to deserve this? I don't know, Kevin. But again, we get another body dragging scene. I feel like every time someone dies, They are dragged slowly. But what's weird is that after this kill, the very next day, we see Anne, the babysitter, cleaning up the blood. And she's almost got all of it, but there's still huge amounts of it smeared on the floor. And freaking Katarina McCall comes in, and she's like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And she's like, "I made coffee." And Katarina McCall, not even looking at the blood on the floor, is like, "Oh, coffee," and goes off and drinks coffee, not noticing the huge smear of blood that Anne is cleaning up. And the whole prying the boards off the freaking door made me think, oh, Anne is in cahoots with the evil, with Dr. Freudstein. That probably is not the case, because, spoilers, ladies and gentlemen, she gets murdered by Dr. Freudstein. They could have easily had some kind of dialogue where she tries to talk to the killer, saying, like, "Haven't I served you?" or something like that. That would have actually kind of made an interesting parallel between her and Emily, the blind seer in The Beyond, who transgressed in a similar way and then got killed by Shrike the Warlock in that movie. That would have been a cool thing to do, to connect these two. But no, Fulci doesn't do that.
Go ahead.
What's hilarious though to me about that whole thing is how, like, she's clearly cleaning up blood, and coffee's more important. Katarina McCall is completely oblivious. But I guess we can chalk it up to her medication.
Yeah, I was about to mention that. Chalk it up to her medication, because that's the reasoning for a lot of stuff that goes on with her. And this is one of her least interesting roles, because she's given very little to do and very little to go with on this movie.
Yeah, she shops, does a lot of shopping. And she goes to like a real like freaking grocery store. I can't remember the name of it, but yeah. I'm surprised there wasn't a beignet in that grocery bag she brings in, because there's always a beignet or a thing of bread. But yeah, it's so bizarre. It should be noted that at this point, there's still no mention of the two things that hold this trilogy together.
Yeah.
Which, like we said, there's no mention of Gates of Hell. 56 minutes into the movie, and there's no cursed book.
Oh, yes, there's no book of Eben.
There's no book of Ebion. There's no book of Enoch. There's no like there's no MacGuffin to tie everything together like there was in the first two movies, unless you consider the tape that Peterson left behind as the quote unquote cursed object, because that is the only other scene in this movie aside from the mannequin scene that I think is really effective and is genuinely disturbing and scary. Is when Norman is researching and he finds the tape that Dr. Peterson left as he's going insane. And he pops it in very slowly. And Peterson just goes on and on about all of the crazy things that he's seen. And although he doesn't give us any real hints about the plot or what's actually going on, it says things like, how many more people will be drawn to the spider web of this house? But what makes the scene work, and what makes me think of similar scenes like that in like the first Evil Dead, aside from his very his scary kind of voice, is how like there's this dream-like kind of camera that goes back to the house and goes up the steps and goes down into the basement, and you see the dead bodies. You see the best gore in the movie. You see people on slabs and mutilated, and then it goes over, and the guy says, "Oh my God, not the children, even the children!" And you see a child's dead body, and it's spine tingling. I think, now that I think about it.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know about you, but to me, that was like the only time where I was like, "Oh, okay, all right."
I don't know if I find anything in this movie spine tingling. Well, let's say this: when I originally saw the film, I probably did, but now having seen almost his entire filmography, I have a different opinion on that. And It's taken me a long time to find copies of most all of his films. I still have not seen all of his films. Obviously, some of his films haven't made their way over to the U.S. or they have a English dubbed copy, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
when,
Yeah.
when I saw this movie, I had not seen like Cat in the Brain, the Black Cat, I think of Murder Rock, and all the other
Oh, I
stuff.
forgot about Murder Rock. Oh,
Yeah, he did so many movies, and for some reason, this one, because it's attached to the Gates of Hell trilogy, a lot more people see this one more fondly than some of the other films, which I thought were far superior than this movie. Now,
let me ask you. Let me ask you something, Kevin, before I forget.
yeah,
When you first saw this, did you think that this line that Bob says when Katarina McCall has said that Anne's not really dead, and Bob goes down to the basement, and Bob shouts with his little toy flashlight, "Mommy says you're not dead. Is that true?" Did you find that as hilarious as I did? Because that was freaking funny as heck.
I think I've always found that hilarious. It's kind of like which one is it? Is it New York Ripper with the killer with the duck? I think
Donald Duck voice is supposed to be disturbing,
yeah.
but it's actually hilarious.
Yes, I kind of pictured. I saw this one first before I saw that, but after seeing that movie, I kind of like, oh shit, there's just some funny shit in here that probably isn't supposed to be funny, but it is type of stuff. I do find some stuff in his movies that are hilarious. Like I love Cat in the Brain. I think that movie's hilarious shit. But for some reason, there's so many people who like really hate that movie. I was like, man, I was finding that movie hilarious.
Or how about the huge cartoon orange yellow eyes that pop out of the shadows in this movie? That are like they look freaking like a Looney Tunes monster, pretty much.
They do. But the thing is, reevaluating these films now because I saw them scatterbrained from college and on, and we've been on a regular basis bringing up a new Fulci movie all the time. So it's becoming now, and we've watched the other three movies. So this will be the fourth one we've watched, kind of in order, and we're kind of dissecting and evaluating these movies as we go along. And I like doing it this way as opposed to what I did when I originally watched these, which is whenever I could find one, I watch it.
So another question I'd like to ask you is when they're got the climax of this movie where this movie picks up a little bit of steam, is Bob gets locked in the basement by a door that nobody bothers to prop open, which and he's screaming, "Mommy, Mommy, Daddy, help me, I'm locked in here, it's scary." And Dr. Freudstein's coming up the steps and he's gonna get him. And the doctor, Katarina McCall tries her best to try and open the door. She can't get it open. She breaks the knife. And then in comes Norman. And Norman comes in and he's like, "Where's the axe? Get the axe." The axe we've never seen until now. And he gets the axe and he starts dumping exposition on us that he figured out off screen in that, I guess, that library with that creepy guy who doesn't do anything but be creepy. I thought for sure he'd come back at the end of the movie, but he never does. He says like Dr. Freudstein was basically researching something paranormal and figured out a way to extend his life forever by cutting up dead bodies and using them to replenish his own cells.
Yes.
So, which to me says once and for all, Dr. Freudstein is not a zombie. If anything, Dr. Freudstein is a Frankenstein monster, which is probably why he's Freudstein.
Ah, good parallel. I never thought of it that way, but you're actually right.
Yeah, because later on when we see him, not only do we see all the bodies and all their gory glory, we see something that looked like a continuity error, because in previous shots where the hand reaches out to Bob or the left hand reaches out to kill somebody, it's like a child's hand. There's no rot on it at all. It's pretty fresh. But the other hand is rotted and corroded, and you think, oh, that's the zombie hand. So almost you might think in the beginning of this movie that maybe there's two killers. Nope, it's the same killer. He's just got different body parts attached to him.
Okay.
So if anything, Freudstein is not a zombie, because a zombie is controlled by something. Either it's their instinct or a voodoo wizard or something. Freudstein has some kind of will of his own. How much of that is still left there in his freaking California raisin head? We never know. If anything, you could say he's a lich in D&D terms, where wizard has basically took his soul out of his body and put it in a Horcrux, and his body can keep enduring forever. So, if anything, that's what he is. But like when you were seeing that, and you're seeing the axe, because he's like, "Step back from the door, Bob. I want to break it down," and he's like, "Okay," but then the hand comes in and presses his head against the door. When the axe was coming through the door, here's Johnny style, coming inches away from little Bob's Hitler Youth face, because he's all blonde hair, blue eyes, and pouty lips. Boom, boom, one side, boom, the other side, boom. Were you thinking what I was thinking, which is, this is kind of sort of like the pickaxe scene in the cemetery in City of the Living Dead?
Yeah.
When poor Katarina McCall is in the coffin.
Yeah.
And and Mr. George, what's his name, goes in and starts trying to get her out while dangerously almost impaling her face with a pickaxe.
I found it funny when I rewatched this film for the podcast, because we had already just talked about City of the Living Dead, and I was like, oh my god, it's different when you're watching them like this so close to each other in order, because I've never done that. I wouldn't have picked up on it like before we did this show, because before I'd watched them all out of order, and it never clicked with me. Also, this one, even though I've always liked this, I just never saw it nearly as much as I saw the other two, because I actually love the other two. I kind of liked all three of them for the longest time, but the other two I always loved more. So I've seen those, I've seen them beyond 1 billion times. This one, because I only had that crappy VHS copy, I've seen it a few times, but not like, I never devoured it until I had the Blu-ray version I just got. So,
so we have to kind of huddle along here and get to the part that will make people go, huh?
Yeah.
Which is the ending to this movie. One thing you're probably not expecting to happen in this movie is poor Katarina McCall gets killed. Spoilers. Mm-hmm. And she gets killed in a really brutal way. That's almost Sam Raimi-esque, actually. They're trying to crawl. I mean, poor Norman, he gets killed by stupidly running up to the lich monster, stabbing him in the gut, thinking, oh, that must work, because maybe in his mind he was working, it worked in City of the Living Dead. And it didn't work for this guy who shats out just goo and maggots, because there's got to be maggots. Got to be maggots in a Fulci movie. Got to be maggots.
Well, that's why people might think that it's more close to a zombie than it is a Frankenstein monster. But in reality, it would be closer to a Frankenstein monster if you didn't have that shot there where maggots are coming out of them.
Yeah, I mean, somebody online drew a parallel because Fulci kept trying to draw parallels between his Yitzhak trilogy and Lovecraft's work. So I'm sorry, I think you can't really do that very well with this movie. You can do that with The Beyond and City of the Living Dead, but somebody was trying to draw parallels between this and Cool Air, which is a short. Yeah, I'm dead serious. They're trying to say that Fulci was drawing from Cool Air, which is a story about a scientist who was preserving his life indefinitely by keeping himself in a almost sub-zero surrounding. And once the air conditions came off, he melts. So he's basically saying that Freudstein is kind of like that. I think that's a stretch, to be honest.
Freudstein doesn't talk. He doesn't do anything other than
kill. That's all he does.
He kills.
Yeah, he kills. He's basically Jason.
Yeah, he's not a very good scientist, because he's
a crappy scientist.
He's a crappy
and you know what? Based on what happens in the end, I'm not even sure, honestly. Maybe he is a zombie, because there seems the ending would almost lead you to believe that there is a will beyond him. Because after he kills Katarina McCall by dragging her down chin first down the stairs, there's a fade out from her perspective. Like, you can see her vision blurring out, like, as her life leaves her, which is kind of brutal and cool. It's not a lot of movies that do that. But there's an abrupt jump cut to Bob trying to get out through the slit in the tomb face that has Mother Freudstein's name and her birth and death date, and the cross There's a lot of broken crosses in Fulci's movie. It's kind of interesting. But anyway, so he, little Bob, little Aryan Hitler Youth Bob, is able to wiggle his way out of there, seemingly. But the moment that he does, bam! Hi, May. How are you doing? Oh, hi, Bob.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, in comes Mrs. Freudstein, who died back in the 1800s. All alive, seemingly.
Alive.
Or
Well,
is she?
Or
Because she comes...
Go
because
ahead.
I'm sorry, because she comes in, and I watched this twice to figure out what the heck she was saying, because it comes by so fast. May saves Bob, quote unquote, but because you see Mrs. Freudstein interact with them and takes them away, and what she says is, she says, now that Bob is staying with us, May, mind your manners. Show him how to be a Freudstein. Some other guests will be destined to drop in soon. And then they go off into the woods. And Fulci uses these weird wide-angle lens to distort all reality and Vaseline on it. And then there's this really stupid quote that means absolutely nothing that's attributed to Henry James, the guy who wrote Turn of the Screw. And that's a whole other thing I won't even get into because it doesn't mean anything. But like the implication here is, I think, like at the end of The Beyond, that Bob is dead. That Bob has been dead since ? And now he's going to go off and be with May, whom, by the way, up until this point, he's called his girlfriend, and he's played tag with her. So it looks like Bob's going to be okay for eternity. Maybe, but I don't know.
So my interpretation of it, and it's going to be different for everyone because everyone has a different way of seeing it, is that this would be the opposite of where the characters end up at the end of The Beyond. The Beyond would be like this desolate, hell-like place, and in this one, Bob ends up in the more heavenly place because Freudstein's wife is there, and of course May is there, and now he's there. That would be the only way I can draw any type of parallel from this film to the other films.
But the problem is that they don't set that up at all. There's not even
they don't. They don't set it up.
There's not even a seed of that. I mean, what would have been interesting if they at least planted a seed where maybe Norman, in his research through all his books, finds out that maybe Mrs. Freudstein and Mr. Freudstein never had children of their own. And that maybe in the end it was Mrs. Freudstein's idea to start looking into this sort of weird research she was doing. Maybe this was all her weird way of setting up a cycle, in which case she can then have children of her own, if not in this life, but in the beyond. That would have made sense. That's not what frickin' Fulci does in this movie.
No, this one, you have to. This one more so than some of his other films. You have to go in, and by the time you get to the end, it's more of what impression the film left on you, and not so much any logic associated with what you just watched. The basic logic would be, hey, like you said, it's a haunted house movie. A family goes into a house, encounters a spirit or entity in the basement that then kills off anyone who enters the house. And by the end of the film, no one survives, and not even Bob, but Bob goes into, quote unquote, the poltergeist thing where he goes into the light.
But then it begs the question of what happened to his parents. Where do their souls go?
Who knows? They're dead. It doesn't matter.
But so's Bob. Then
No.
what?
Why do you ask me these silly questions? That's why I say the logic for this film is kind of steeped in all kinds of different ideals that Fulci probably had, but didn't have the means to fully explore them, or didn't care to explore them. Some of his films are just.
Yeah, I think he might have been just too under the gun to finish these things. Because, like I said, if we look at the timeline, he did these back to back to back to back.
Yeah, I mean.
And what's sad about it, though, is like there is potential for this material. It's ripe for the kind of stuff that he's interested in. I mean, like the Freudian Fulci that he is could totally have gone to town on the symbolism of, not believing your inner child, what childhood trauma does to you, the subconscious, the house as an allegory for the subconscious, going down into the basement, all these weird psycho, like analytical things that he could have delved into, but he doesn't.
No.
It's like, on the one hand, it's like almost, it's Fulci at his most unfiltered, but sadly, it's not good because he pushed the envelope of narrative chaos so deep that he was unfettered by any need for any structure of any kind. And he needed to be reined in a little bit in order to make something really good. And he also needed to innovate in the gore department, which he really doesn't do like he did before. So, yeah. Disappointing.
It is, but this is where I'm going to take a little bit of a step back from the movie itself, just so that people who may have watched this film and didn't get it, or if they're people who are so enamored with what Fulci created with the Gates of Hell trilogy, would like to see what it could have been. And I know I've talked to you about this before, but with Ebon Press, which is a comic book publishing company who has done official adaptations of this Gates of Hell trilogy, as well as Zombie and the New York Ripper, which I think their New York Ripper 2 just came out. So if you're a fan of New York Ripper, you can always pick up how this company did a sequel based on that. But the important thing is that one of their mandates was that they wanted to kind of integrate all three of these films into a cohesive story, comic book wise. And they did their Beyond, they did House by the Cemetery, they did City of the Living Dead, and of course they did their own sequel to the entire trilogy, Escape from Beyond, which I think is the title, but I'm not 100% sure. I believe that is. But Ebon Press and the people behind that are people who love Fulci's work. They love these films. These films have good, bad, ugly. These films have had a profound effect on Fulci fans. And these fans are who put together these comics. And these comics found a way to fully integrate all three of these Gates of Hell movies into a cohesive story and expand upon it. So fans of these films can definitely find a way into this world of the Gates of Hell and actually have a cohesive story that kind of bridges all of the gaps between them. And so I do want to have people go out and check for it. You can just go to www.ebonpress.com. It will lead you to what they're currently doing. You'll be able to find some of this work out there. I've read.
Oh yeah.
And I've read most of the early ones, so they're great.
Oh yeah. And ladies and gentlemen, when Kevin told me this existed, I'm like, I definitely gotta seek this out, because just to see how they would have strung all this chaos together to something that makes sense. That must be a sight to behold. I would need to see that.
It was years.
It must have been
years.
Oh wow! I'm sure. I am very sure, and I'm glad it was done by people who love the stuff.
Yes.
And you know who else probably loves this movie? You know who else probably is a huge fan of this movie? I'll bet you that Arnold Schwarzenegger is a huge fan.
Is it that time? Tell me.
It is that time. And you know, with this movie, there really isn't. So I'd like to do the Schwarzenegger alternator for this movie. But I've done it with the last two, and dadgummit, I'm going to be consistent with my Gates of Hell and my Fulci thing. We always try to find a point where there would be a kill shot, a kill quip, if you will, that Schwarzenegger always does in his movies. And we like to imagine here at Conversations in Horror, whenever I'm on, that if Schwarzenegger had been cast as a character who might deliver such a line. And I was hard-pressed to find a character who did that in this movie. But then I realized, wouldn't it be interesting if maybe Dr. Freudstein wasn't so silent? Maybe if he was a bit more of a talkative killer, like a Freddy Krueger instead of a Jason. How neat would it have been if some humor was added into this? If we had Schwarzenegger as Dr. Freudstein. And I've got 6 of these, Kevin, because I got 1 or 2 for every kill.
Oh my, I'm going to let you do them too.
Yes. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Schwarzenegger alternator for House by the Cemetery, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger as Dr. Freudstein, the not zombie. So here's our Schwarzenegger alternator for the first kill, the girl in the beginning of the movie who has no name. She's running, screaming, and he's behind her. Steve's not here. He didn't like your sharp tongue. Stabs her in the head with a knife, but I do.
That was actually good.
Number 2, for Mrs. Gilstein, the realtor lady. I got 2 of those. Number 1, or sorry, 2A. Let's play this. You shouldn't poke around where you don't belong. Or 2B, you stepped on my wife's tomb. Big mistake.
Jesus.
Little Last Action Hero there for you. Big mistake. I always like the way you said that. Number 4, for when he cuts Anne's head off. You know how I appreciate you cleaning up my work. Now you get to be a part of it.
Jesus.
Or, Anne, don't worry. I only want you for your body. You can keep the rest.
That was good too.
Yeah. And finally, number 6, for when he kills Norman. Hey, Bob, time to play Who is Your Daddy and How is he dead?
Oh my God.
And that's our Schwarzenegger alternators for House by the Cemetery. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here all week.
It's always good to hear what you come up with. Trust me. And since we've done these for all of the Fulci movies, it's always good to come back to them.
And you know what else we've done for all the Fulci movies? We have rated these movies. So what do we rate House by the Cemetery, and what object do we pick to define our ratings? Because we don't just do stars here. At least not if I have anything to say about it.
So yes, as he was saying, with films, instead of doing stars, we do an object or a thing from the film itself, and we still rate it as though 1 star is poor, 5 stars being horrible. What do you want to start off with? Or
Well, thank you, Kevin. This movie was tough. This movie was tough, but it's not without its redeeming qualities, as we've discussed. There's at least 2 good scenes that I can name off the top of my head. Maybe 2 fun kills, and there's at least enough here to chew on in terms of like redeeming ideas, and also, like I said, if you just want to think of it as just this big fever dream that's coming out of a freaking autistic kid's mind, that is fully. You can do that. Yeah. And you might just have to in order to keep your sanity while watching it. Okay. But for me, there's so many objects you could choose. You could choose the bat. You could choose the axe. You could choose the, freaking tape that the Peterson tape, as we'll call it. Or like anything really, because it's all over the place, this movie. A little tombstone, or that freaking crypt. Yeah, you could use that thing. That's a great little shot with Katarina McCall trying to claw her way up through with the blue light coming up. That was a good shot, actually. But for me, I think I'm going to pick a bloody mannequin head because I love the scene, that just nightmarish out of the blue scene in the beginning where a mannequin's head just gets chopped off by some invisible machete and just falls down, and it's bloody, and there's a bloody stump in it. It's like something out of House of Wax or something. But so to me, I would rate this movie 2 bloody mannequin severed heads out of 5.
I was expecting you to do 1, but I'm surprised you did 2, because the thing is, as much as I used to like the film, I'm only going to give it 2 gravestones in the house. Because if you had got me in the 90s, I probably would have given it 3.5. But now, having seen a clear copy in all of its glorious, 4K or 4K-ness, I was like, yeah, this one does not hold up nearly as well. But you'd have to be on drugs to enjoy this movie. Really enjoy
lots of drugs,
or a drinking game with your buddies.
Lots of drinking.
So that's where I place the movie.
I agree. In fact, I'm really being generous with 2, to be honest. A lot of it comes from, like, my big fear when watching this was I thought that I would hate this movie so much that I would just like swear off Fulci and like screw him. I would, but I didn't. I didn't. So my love of Fulci and his his methodology of working and all those things, like it played into it a little bit. And like I said, this movie's not completely without redemptive qualities, although your mileage with Bob will vary.
Yeah,
it will a lot.
Especially on the first time watch. And if you're not a fan of Fulci or you don't know who he is to begin with, yeah.
Please don't start with this movie, ladies and gentlemen. Please don't. Or if you're a Fulci fan, please don't say, hey, you should really start with House by the Cemetery. Guys, that's irresponsible. Do not do that. Don't. Just don't.
All right. I want to thank you, Thomas, for joining us in this conversation in horror, in which we talked about Lucio Fulci's House by the Cemetery from 1981. I hope everyone out there, you've enjoyed listening to us talk about this movie. If you have not already, check out all of the previous episodes for the other Fulci movies that we've already talked about, which includes Zombie, The Beyond, and City of the Living Dead. We had a lot of fun doing those, and we're going to continue to do them because like some of our other amazing horror directors out there, we just want to keep doing these films until we get all of Fulci's horror films done one day.
Until we have to preserve ourselves as an undead Frankenstein corpse thing. We're still reviewing these movies.
So I would like you to all make sure that you check out previous episodes of the show. Make sure to like, follow, share, subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Regular episodes are every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Specially themed episodes, which we have occasionally, always come out on Mondays at 8 a.m. Also, do not forget to check out our Patreon exclusive podcast, Conversations in 4Color, which delves deep into comic books, manga, and graphic novels. Now, since that is on our Patreon page, that is for our subscribers and our followers, so you must be a follower or subscriber in order to access that podcast. But trust me, you're going to enjoy it, and you're going to love the other type of stuff we have to do. So without that, I want to thank you all for joining us on our show, and we'll see you on the next episode. Have a good day.
Hi, I'm Bob.
Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production. Written, produced, and directed by Kevin L. Powers. Executive producer, Kelly A. Inoka. All contents and material from this episode of Conversations in Horror is copyright 2025 Broken Lighthouse Pictures.